Hello students, we will continue discussing the pain in second part of this video. Now if you have not go through my first part, then first of all go through the first part of the pain, because this second part is in the direct continuation of the first part. So it will be better to understand this part if you have gone through the first part. Now in the first part we have discussed about the introduction of the pain, then receptors which are responsible for the pain and its characteristics, then types of the pain like fast pain and slow pain, the pathways which are responsible for that, and the differences between the pathway of fast pain and slow pain, and some other types of pain. Okay, so that's it. Now in this second part we are going to discuss about the analgesia, that is pain suppression system, and applied aspect of the pain. Okay, so that's it. So we'll start with the pain suppression system, that is analgesia first. Okay, in pain suppression system there are two mechanisms. One is by gate control mechanism and another one by releasing opioids. Now our body has the ability to just decrease the amount of pain when it is not needed. So our body can suppress the pain by these two mechanisms. Let's take example of these two mechanisms first of all, so that you can better understand these two mechanisms. First of all, gate control mechanism. When you have an injury over your forearm, and then if you just press hard proximal to that area, pain will decrease in severity. That will be because of first mechanism, that is gate control mechanism. Now second example, if you have met an accident and you have just fracture or some ligament tissue injury or soft tissue injury, then at the time of accident severity of pain will be less. But when you just reach the home and take rest after some time, then pain increases. So the decrease in pain at the time of accident or during exercise is because of the second mechanism, that is opioid release. Okay, so you may have just feel this type of decrease in pain. Now let's understand both this mechanism one by one. First of all, first mechanism, that is gate control mechanism, that is because of the lateral inhibition by the A alpha and A beta fibers. Now that is because of this A alpha and beta fibers are slightly thicker than A delta fibers or C fibers, which will transmit pain. So the fibers which are transmitting pain are of A delta or C fibers, which are thinner, and A alpha and beta fibers are slightly thicker. Let's understand this by figure. Now as you can see, this upper pathway is for the pressure signal and this lower pathway is for the pain signal. This neuron will transmit this pain signal to this another neuron which is inside the spinal cord. So this is the peripheral now, this is spinal now. Now this is for the pressure signal. Now pain signal will be transmitted from this neuron to this neuron, okay, which are thinner slightly. When you give a pressure just beside this injured area, then this pressure signal will be transmitted via these thicker fibers from one neuron to another neuron. Now this neuron is slightly thicker and bigger, so signal will be larger. This will give some interneurons, this red one, which will just inhibit the neurons which lie beside this pressure signal neuron. Okay, so all these neurons which lie beside this pressure signal neuron will get inhibited. So this pain signal will also will get inhibited. Okay, so pain signal also will try to inhibit this pressure signal, but the fibers are thinner, so pain signal neuron will not be able to inhibit this pressure signal, and pressure signal which is larger will inhibit the pain signal. So pressure will win. So when you give a pressure, it will just laterally inhibit the pain signal, and only pressure signal will reach to the brain, and pain signal will not be able to reach to the brain. Okay, so brain will only feel pressure, not pain. So that's how lateral inhibition works. Okay, because pressure signal neurons are of A alpha or A beta types of fiber, which are thicker as compared to the pain fibers, which are of A delta or C types of fibers, which are thinner as compared to this pressure signal. So that's how lateral inhibition works. Now we have just taken into account pressure. Apart from the pressure, rubbing as well as sacking of injured area will also work by lateral inhibition. Apart from that, acupuncture, as you have heard the name, will also decrease the pain by this mechanism. And the last is transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. That is new term for you. Let's just give you some explanation for that. TENS is a non-invasive peripheral stimulation technique used to relieve pain. During TENS, that is transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation, pulsed electrical currents, which are slightly smaller, are delivered across the intact surface of skin to activate underlying nerves, which are thicker in diameter than A delta, that is A alpha and beta. So this A alpha and beta will just laterally inhibit it. Okay, so that's how. Okay, now second mechanism, which is via release of opioids. Now endogenous opioids are mainly endorphin and enkephalin, which are endogenous means which are produced by our body and secreted inside the body. Mainly these two opioids will inhibit the pain. Now how it occurs? Now this analgesia system, as you can see in this figure, consists of mainly three major components. First is periaqueductal gray area and periventricular areas of the mesencephalon here, and upper pons surround the aqueduct of sylvius and portion of the third and fourth ventricles. Neurons from this area send signals to the second part. These neurons will release enkephalin. That's why they are known as enkephalinergic neurons. Now this second part, this raphe magnus nucleus, which is a thin midline nucleus located in the lower pons and upper medulla. Apart from that, another nucleus, reticularis paragigantocellularis, located laterally in the medulla here, which is not shown in this figure. From this nuclei, second order signals are transmitted down the dorsolateral columns to the spinal cord. From here to spinal cord, these neurons will secrete serotonin. So that's why it is known as serotonergic neurons. Okay, so here serotonin will be released. Now third part, that is made up of interneurons or pain inhibitory complex, which is located inside the dorsal horns of the spinal cord. Now this neuron will get stimulated by these second order neurons. These third order neurons will release enkephalin again, which is opioid, and this opioid will inhibit this neuron which is present inside the pain pathway, second neuron in the anterolateral system, that is pathway for the pain. So pain signal which is coming from this peripheral pain neuron, peripheral receptor, which is transmitted to this second order neuron, will get inhibited by this interneuron. So when this interneuron is get stimulated, it will release opioid here, and so transmission of the signal from this first neuron to second order neuron will get inhibited, so will not occur. So this pain signal will not reach to the brain. This neuron will go upwards to the brain, so this pain signal will not reach to the brain and will inhibited here, will be blocked. Okay, so that's how this system will work. So this inhibition is occurred by the opioids, endogenous opioids, mainly enkephalin and endorphin. Okay, now after these interneurons will get stimulated and opioid is released, this opioid will work by three mechanisms. First of all, let's see the whole pathway. First of all, neurons in the periaqueductal gray area will release enkephalin and will stimulate the second order neurons, which are serotonergic neurons in nuclear raphe magnus, which will release serotonin and will activate the third order neurons, which are enkephalinergic neurons, interneurons in the dorsal horn, which will release enkephalin and will cause the inhibition via three mechanisms. First is by presynaptic inhibition by just stimulating opioid receptors, which will cause decrease in calcium influx. So the release of the neurotransmitter will decrease. Second, by just combining to the postsynaptic opioid receptors, so this increase in potassium conductance, which will cause hyperpolarization, so will also decrease the pain transmission. And third is via opioid receptors on dorsal root ganglia cell body. All these three mechanisms will reduce the duration of EPSP, that is excitatory postsynaptic potential. So excitatory postsynaptic potential, which is developed in dorsal horn neuron in the pain pathway, will reduce. So excitation will not occur and this pain will not transmit. It's shown by the red arrow. So there will be a blockage of pain pathway at this level, that is from the first order to second order neuron in dorsal horn of the spinal cord. Okay, so that is all about the second mechanism, that is via opioid system, and that's how the whole pain suppression system works. Okay, so now we'll just talk about the applied aspect. Okay, so let's discuss applied physiology about the pain. First of all, hyperalgesia. It is an exaggerated response to a noxious stimuli. Noxious means painful. So stimuli which is painful will cause exaggerated response instead of normal response. So response will be more than it should be. In other terms, it is hypersensitivity to a pain. Now there are two types of hyperalgesia, primary and secondary. Primary means excessive sensitivity of pain receptors themselves. Secondary means facilitation of the sensory transmission throughout the pathway of the pain. Example of primary hyperalgesia is extreme sensitivity of sunburned skin, which results from the sensitization of the skin pain endings by the local tissue products from the burn. Secondary hyperalgesia frequently results from the lesion in the spinal cord or thalamus or throughout the pathway of the pain. So that is difference between the primary and secondary hyperalgesia. Now the second term, that is allodynia, which means sensation of pain in response to a normally innocuous stimuli. Innocuous means a stimuli which is not a painful. So normal stimuli will cause sensation of pain. So that is the difference between allodynia and hyperalgesia. In hyperalgesia, stimuli will be painful, while in allodynia, stimuli will not be painful. Okay, so then next is herpes zoster or shingles. Now this is a disease which is caused by the herpes virus, in which herpes virus will infect a dorsal root ganglion of the spinal cord. Now this causes severe pain in the dermatomal segment subserved by that ganglion, thus eliciting a segmental type of pain that encircles halfway around the body. Disease is called herpes zoster or shingles because of the skin eruption that often ensues. Now the cause of pain is presumably infection of the pain neuronal cells in the dorsal root ganglion by the virus. In addition to causing pain, virus is carried by the neuronal cytoplasmic flow outward through the neuronal peripheral axons to their cutaneous origins. Here the virus causes a rash that vasculates within a few days and then crusts over within another few days, and all of this occurring within dermatomal area. Okay, so that is herpes zoster. The next one is tic doulorex. It is a lacinating pain, occasionally occurs in some people over one side of the face in the sensory distribution area of the 5th or 9th cranial nerve, that is trigeminal or glossopharyngeal. This phenomena is known as tic doulorex. It is also known as trigeminal neuralgia or glossopharyngeal neuralgia, respectively. The pain feels like a sudden electrical shocks, and it may appear for only a few seconds at a time or may be almost continuous. Often it is set off by exceedingly sensitive trigger areas on the surface of the face or in the mouth or inside the throat, almost always by the mechanoreceptive stimuli rather than pain stimuli. For example, when a patient swallows a bolus of food, As food touches a tonsil, it might set off a severe lacerating pain in the mandibular portion of the fifth cranial nerve. Okay, so that's how tic doulorex occurs. The last one is headache. Now we'll discuss the headache in slightly detail because it is important. Okay, headache is slightly important topic, so we'll discuss slightly in detail. Headaches are the type of pain which is referred to the surface of the head from the deep head structures. Now the headaches can be classified in two parts based on the origin: intracranial headaches and extracranial headaches. Now the headaches which results from the pain stimuli arising inside the cranium, then it is known as intracranial headaches. But if it originates from the outside the cranium, then it is known as extracranial origin or extracranial headaches, like from the nasal sinuses or some muscles which lie outside the cranium, etc., etc. So let's discuss these two one by one. Now first of all, headaches of intracranial origin. First of all, let's see some pain sensitive areas which are present inside the cranial vault. In cranial vault, all these areas does not cause pain, particularly brain tissue. Brain tissue themselves are almost totally insensitive to the pain. Even cutting or electrically stimulating the sensory areas of the cerebral cortex only occasionally causes pain. But apart from the brain tissue, the structures which are surrounding the brain tissue will cause pain, like venous sinuses, tentorium, dural mater, then various blood vessels, particularly middle meningeal artery. These structures, when are damaged, will cause pain. Okay, so these are the pain sensitive areas. Now let's discuss some of these intracranial headaches one by one. First one, headaches of meningitis. This is one of the most severe headaches of all that results from the meningitis, which causes inflammation of all the meninges, including the sensitive areas of the dura and the sensitive areas surrounding the venous sinuses. Such intense headache can cause extreme headache pain referred over the entire head. Now the next one is headaches caused by the low cerebrospinal fluid pressure. Removing as little as 20 ml of fluid from the spinal canal, particularly if patient remains standing, often causes intense intracranial headache. Now removing this quantity of fluid removes part of the flotation for the brain that is normally provided by the CSF. The weight of brain then stretches and otherwise distort the various dural surfaces and thereby elicits the pain that causes headache. Then next one is alcoholic headache. Sometimes alcohol, because it is toxic to the tissues, directly irritates the meninges and causes intracranial pain. Next one is headache caused by the constipation. Constipation in some patients may cause headache. Now the cause of constipation headache is not because of the direct nervous impulses from the colon, but it mostly results from the absorbed toxic products from the colon. The last one is headache of migraine. Let's discuss it slightly in detail. Now the headache caused by the migraine is very common. Migraine headache is special type of headache that is thought to result from the abnormal vascular phenomena, although the exact mechanism is not known. But migraine headaches often begins with various prodromal sensations, such as nausea, loss of vision in the part of field of vision, visual aura, and other sensory hallucination instead of headache. So first of all, these prodromal symptoms will occur, and then after 30 to 60 minutes headache will start. Okay, so now let's discuss the mechanism of migraine. One of the theories that when there is prolonged emotions or tension is there, then it will cause reflex vasospasm inside the arteries. of the brain. This vasospasm will cause ischemia. This ischemia will produce prodromal symptoms, not headache. Then after some times, these smooth muscles of this artery will exhaust. So the exhaustion of the smooth muscle contraction will result in dilatation and pulsation intensely. So the intense dilatation and pulsation will cause excessive stretching of the walls. The excessive stretching of the walls will cause pain of the migraine headache. So after some times headache starts. Okay, so cause of actual pain of migraine headache is pulsation or excessive stretching of the arterial wall. Okay, so now let's discuss extracranial types of headache, which result from the pain arising out of the structures which lie outside the cranium, like few muscles, eye, nasal sinuses, etc. So let's discuss few of them. First, headache due to muscle spasm. Now, emotional tension often causes many of the muscles of the head, especially those muscles attached to the scalp and the neck muscles attached to the occiput, to become spastic, and it is postulated that this is one of the common cause of the headache. The pain of the spastic head muscles supposedly is referred to the overlying areas of the head and give one of the same type of headache as intracranial lesions do. Now next is a headache caused by the irritation of the nasal and accessory nasal structures. The mucous membranes of the nose and nasal sinuses are sensitive to pain, but not so intensely so. Nevertheless, infection or other irritative processes in widespread areas of the nasal structures often summate and cause headache that is referred behind the eyes, or in the case of frontal sinus infection, to the frontal structures of the forehead and scalp. Okay, so that is all about the irritation of nasal structures. The last one, it is because of the headache caused by the eye disorders. Now there are mainly two causes for the eye disorders. One is difficulty in focusing one's eyes clearly may cause excessive contraction of the eye ciliary muscles in an attempt to gain clear vision. Even though these muscles are extremely small, it is believed that tonic contraction of them can cause retroorbital headache. Also, excessive attempts to focus the eye can result in reflex spasm in various facial and extraocular muscles, which is the possible cause of a headache. Now, another cause of the eye disorder is which originates in the eyes occurs when eyes are exposed to excessive irradiation by the light rays, especially ultraviolet light, which is found when we are looking at the sun or at the arc welder. For even few seconds, it may result in headache that lasts from 24 to 48 hours. The headache sometimes results from the actinic irritation of the conjunctiva. So that is the cause of the headache caused by these ultraviolet rays. And the pain is referred to the surface of the head or retroorbitally. Okay, so these are the various types of extracranial headaches. So now the applied aspect is also over. Okay, so that's all about the pain. Now next time we will discuss the temperature, which is the last sensation that is left in the sensory system. Okay, thank you.